Well, thank you, and good morning. And Jackie, thank you for the introductions. And Jill and I are so pleased. I'm pleased to be back, and Jill's pleased to be joining me today and to talk about recruitment. As Jackie's pulling up our slides, I just want to say that one thing that Jackie didn't mention in Jill's introduction is Jill is known as the person on our team that can find the unicorn. So Jill is an awesome recruiter, and I'm just so happy, Jill, that you were able to join me today. And back in the day when I used to recruit, and I don't recruit as much now. In fact, I don't recruit, I leave it to the specialists. But what I've learned from Jill and other recruiters on the team is it's changed so much over the past, 5 years, Jill, on how we recruit and in order to how to recruit to find unicorns. So hopefully we can share some of our wisdom with you guys today, and we'd like to keep it quite fluid today. We've developed an agenda. But, really, this is an opportunity for you to connect with a specialist in this field. So if you've got questions or you want answers, make sure we know what they are so that we can address them throughout the session. And after the break, we're actually going to do some practical work and put together a recruitment plan. So before you go into that session, you want to get as much information as you can so your recruitment plan can maybe look and feel differently from some of the recruitment plans that you might have put together in the past, because today is all about trying to break old ways of thinking, old paradigms, to think of new ways of recruiting. And so that's what we want to think about today. This is a quote, Jill. I think you came up with that. You found this quote, right?
No, I think you did.
Oh, did I? Okay. Well, it was after I had a conversation with Jill about the approach she takes with respect to recruiting, and that's like the client management approach, right, Jill?
Yes.
And I had never really thought about that before, right? I always thought, I take the approach when I did recruit, that, my organization is my client. But Jill actually takes the approach that not only is the organization she recruits for her client, but all of her applicants are her clients. And it just changes your mindset then about how you should be treating your applicants. Because within those applicants, you are going to find your unicorn, somebody very, very special. So I liked that approach, and I guess I did go back then and find this quote, and I thought that it's a nice way to start off our workshop today and change our paradigm and maybe our thinking about how we've recruited in the past and our mindset as we go into recruiting. Recruiting is one of the most important and I would say probably the most important job we do as HR professionals. Often many people go into that field as a beginning of their career. They'll go into recruiting. But I remember when I started working for UFA many years ago, and my first orientation, my first day with the CEO, and he said to me, "Janet, you have a very important role here at UFA, and that is to bring us, attract, find the best talent for us." And that's all about recruiting. So it's a very, very important job, and we're pleased to be here to share some thinking about the process. So a little bit about the morning. We're going to talk about trends. We're going to talk about economic and social trends that actually have impacted the way we recruit and why we recruit the way we recruit today. We're going to talk about some trends in recruiting. We always want to phrase and position recruiting strategically, so we are going to talk about strategic planning and the method in which you recruit in order to be strategic. We're going to give you some practical recruiting tactics. And then we're going to take a break, and we're going to do some practical work at our tables as we put together a recruitment plan based on some of the things that we discussed. The time agenda is loose. If we get going and we are on a topic that is important to the group here, we will continue to work that topic and address those before we go into our case study, because getting as much information as we can before we go into the case study will just make it that much more worthwhile for you guys. And so we'll spend some time on the recruitment plan and then Q&As, and we will be out of here by noon in order for everybody to get back to their cars and get their parking paid. So that's our morning. Any questions on the agenda? Okay, we're all good? Great. So what we'd like to do first of all, right, Jill, is just get some feedback. So we'd like to get you to share at your tables, maybe just introduce yourselves, who you are, your position in your organization, and what's your biggest recruitment challenge. And then we're going to come back as a full group, and we want to hear what your biggest challenge is. So introduce yourselves at your table, talk about your biggest challenge, and then we're going to ask for some feedback, because as we go through the morning, we want to make sure we're nailing your biggest challenges. So have some good discussion. We'll give you a couple of minutes at your table. Okay? Okay, we'll just come together as a full group, and if we could just go round table, and Jill's got the mic, and we'll start at this table here. What's your biggest recruitment challenges? So if you leave with nothing else today, what do you want to learn?
And but we have a lot of commonalities, so just because I'm a third-party recruiter, but the biggest challenge we were talking about is matching our client expectation, whether it's an internal client or your hiring manager or our external client, on finding that unicorn and how long it's going to take and how much it's going to cost. You know, like what the compensation level is and what their expectation is, and I guess matching or creating realistic expectations given the market and what they're looking for was something that came up with all of us.
Excellent. Good. Trying to find the caliber of talent that you want when the price tag on it is going to be maybe a little bit lower than what they have experienced. And not just looking for a technical skill, but in some cases a depth of experience or knowledge about the nonprofit sector or whatever area of work. So how do you buy that?
Right. Awesome.
The challenge I see is working with Albertans who've had high-level positions and assisting them to make adjustments to the skills they present, to even go into entry level in a new field if they need a career change because of the economy, and building hope in them to make the transition.
Just challenges with so many varied roles that maybe didn't exist 5 or 2 years ago, that are really hard to sometimes describe or find the right candidate, because it's just such a new sort of position, or has a really strange job title that is trying to fit with the new needs of what we're trying to achieve. So it's sometimes challenging to find the right fit if it's a job someone's never seen before.
Doing the work up front as a company and really defining and being clear on the skills that you're looking for, but not only the skills that you're looking for, the sort of cultural, the soft skills, what does an ideal candidate look like for our situation or our company is very important.
And Jill, actually to that point too, you are seeing a lot of different titles out there now, right?
Yes.
People are calling jobs different these days, right? So to Jill's point, getting really clear, like trying to sort of say, okay, that's the title, but really what's the crux of the job, right? And really getting an understanding of that skill set. And I really like Jill's point about the culture, right? Like we're finding that we're spending a lot of time right now just understanding culture and fit, as well as skills, abilities, and knowledge. Correct, Jill?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I think it's important, or I think I have to tell you a little bit about myself. So when I started, so I'm an HR generalist, so I've got a varied background. When I started my career, I worked for an agency, a placement agency, and that was a very specific model. So we would place job ads and resumes would come in, and we'd interview them. We'd have our client, and there was a head fee involved in it, and it was the whole goal was to get as many candidates in front of the client as you could, and it was maybe a little more about the head fee than it was the fit, I would have to say. I've been working with Janet for the last 10 years. We do a lot of recruitment. I do a lot of recruitment. We work primarily with small to mid-sized growing companies that aren't big enough to have, in some cases, their own HR person or department. And some of the challenges the small guys have is they can't pay top dollar. They can't pay big salaries. And so recruitment becomes a little more challenging. Our model is a little different. We don't charge a head fee. It's more an by the hour service. It's a different kind of recruiting. The relationship that we develop with the client is key critical to us being able to help them, find that unicorn.
And to this point here, matching client expectation, like a lot of time has to be set up front to just help and educate them, right? What does it look like out there today, right? Because it's looking different, right? So a lot of upfront managing that expectation before you even post your job, right? Because as you talk to that, and that client can be your manager, or it can be the organization you're working for, whatever, the person that you're hiring for, right? Getting them in a room and spending upfront time talking to them and really getting inside their head to understand the profiling of this exact unicorn that they want to find. Right, Jill?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So we're going to try to address some of these challenges as we go through the workshop this morning. What we want to do is cover off a few things as well. So this morning we want to talk about the recession and the impact that it's had on the talent pool and the applicants that are available to us as we recruit. What's happened there? And we want to talk a little bit about transfer of skill sets and how that's created opportunity but also challenges, not only for our applicants but also as us as recruiters as well. We want to talk about the millennials because they're making up 50% of our workforce, and they are having a huge impact on the way we do things in the workforce today, whether that's recruiting or whatever we do. So we want to talk about the millennials, and we want to talk to millennials in respect to recruiting. We want to talk about the gig economy because that is something that has changed, right? Back in the day, people were out there looking for full-time secure employment, right? People now embrace shorter-term gigs. It excites them. It's what they want. So it's a completely different shift then as we go looking, because we're now looking for people that embrace shorter term experiences, the gig. So what does that mean? And we want to also talk about baby boomers, people my age who are deciding to stay in the workforce longer. So what's that looking like as we recruit and look for suitable candidates? Is there anything else that is impacting on recruitment from your perch that you're seeing that we would want to talk about? I'm just looking at your challenges here. This here talks to that, the transfer of knowledge. I think the variety of roles here, which we've already talked about, is also another trend, right? Yes. Yes. Why don't you say that then? Do you need the mic?
This has been a big thing in the U.S. for a long time, but I'm seeing it more in Canada. Diversity,
yeah.
Diversity of candidate pool.
Oh, huge.
Diversity, not only that, but I think maybe for the first time ever, we have 5 different generations in the workforce today, which brings with it its own set of challenges.
And also other aspects of diversity too, with respect to, first workforce.
Yes.
So what does that mean? It could be gender, it could be cultural, it could be age, it's whatever, right? Yes, they want that diversity. And that's why meeting and this, managing client expectations and understanding that before you even start the process. What's that looking like? Okay, thank you. So you're gonna take over now, Jill, and talk to a couple of slides.
Right. Okay, so when we face our recruitment challenges, and we look at things like an oil and gas sector that's been in a downturn, and so there's a lot of oil and gas candidates out there that are struggling to find work. Maybe we've got a very vibrant tech sector, and so we have more roles than we have candidates. In the nonprofit sector, you've got this very large, diverse pool of candidates to look at. And I guess we want to encourage you when it comes to recruiting and finding that unicorn, take a look at the candidates and the skills that maybe might fall outside of the nonprofit sector, and look at what they're bringing. So maybe it's an oil and gas professional, or somebody that has been a top manager at a company before and brings a different kind of skill set, but people skills, sales, IT skills, accounting, numbers skills, and don't just rule out a candidate because they don't have sector experience. Look at the skills that they're bringing, because transferring skills from one sector to another is going to be important going forward, and getting this workforce back to work, or finding the best talent for your organization and fit. So where might those specific management, accounting, IT skills fit? So good managers are good managers. One of the most important group of employees that are out there are your people managers, and a good people manager is somewhat rare, and a good people manager is going to be able to transition from one sector to the other, and a good people manager will bring with them skills that will be invaluable to your organization. Nonprofit. We do a lot of career transition at Salopec, and when I'm talking to people who are unemployed and worried, and I tell them to go out and get involved and look at the nonprofit sector and volunteer and give back to the community. Keep yourself busy. You never know who you're going to meet, or what's going to happen, or the rewarding experience you're going to get from giving back. And people are changing their expectations. People are looking for different things when they're out there looking for work. They want meaning. They want challenge, and the nonprofit sector can provide that. Retail jobs, obviously, people with sales skills and customer service abilities are going to be able to fit into a number of industries in a number of different ways. Right. So I would say then that there's a piece of work and responsibility that your organization has around culture and challenge. And, people are looking for different things now. We're going to go into, and we're going to talk about millennials. Millennials, they're a whole different ballgame, right? Salary and compensation or money issues aren't as important to them as other things that organizations can offer. There's always going to be a risk with oil and gas, and it turning around, and then you losing those candidates. But really, there's risk. There's risk with any candidate, right? There's a piece of work that the company has to do, and they're going to come in and they're going to have these phenomenal skills. So how do you capture those, and how do you utilize those to the best of the organization's ability? And there's succession planning, there's transfer of knowledge. It's what can you get out of that person and the value that they can add during the time that you have them.
And I think that's really important, is to think in terms of, I'm going to likely have this person for a year. It's going to be a gig. Is that going to be good for us? And again, that's that conversation you need to have up front with your hiring manager, right? How can we, because if that's a good thing, you will look in different places to get those candidates, right? So again, it's that managing expectations up front so that you can go looking for that person that might bring huge benefit for your organization, but just for a year. Would that be a good thing or not a good thing?
What does it take to attract and retain millennials. And so I guess millennials would include the youngest sector of employees that we have in our workforce right now. And in 2015, millennials overtook baby boomers and became the largest living generation in North America. So, you know, a large portion of your workforce is now made up of millennials. 75% of the workforce will be comprised of millennials in the next 10 years. So they're a very, you know, understanding what they're all about is going to be important for employers going forward. And what impact is that going to have? So employers are going to experience an enormous influx of very digitally savvy, ambitious, social job seekers. So social media is really going to have an impact and affect everything around us. Companies are going to have to revisit their recruiting strategies and fully understand how best to respond to this changing tide. Right. So millennials, they approach their career in a different way than we've seen any of the previous generations. So things that were important to past generations are not as important to baby boomers. They're more altruistic. They want to work with companies that are doing, are environmentally friendly, are giving back to the community, are, have a give back component to them. Unlike baby boomers and Gen Xers, they don't seek out employers so salary is not their main concern. They seek out employers who are innovative, who are green, who make positive contributions to society, who give back to society and the environment. Their motivation comes less in the form of salary remuneration and more in the forms of social and environmental justice. So that's an important thing to note about millennials.
What are you guys seeing with respect to the millennials? Who are the millennials? How old are they? Yeah, right. So yeah, I mean, and so what are you guys seeing with respect to your millennials? Have we captured it? Are we getting, we've got a couple of more talks about their ambition too, which we'll talk about, but what are you noticing about your millennials?
Career progression is very important to them. And so how do we meet that challenge? They're looking for career progression. So one of the ways that we might do that is we might think about renaming jobs and, coming up with job titles that are a little more junior and where they can show that they are progressing in their career. So think of a more junior career title or job title and then an intermediate, and so that, because seeing their progression in their career is important to them. Mentorship is important to them. Training is important to them. Learning new skills is important to them. Right, transitional career steps and younger sounding jobs titles. When companies develop in between steps and titles, millennials realize their desire for career transition. It's important to them. Incremental training and experience that will aid them with future career advancement opportunities in the future. That's what's important to millennials.
So if you're thinking, for example, that one person that's going to be with you for a year, right? What could you do with that position to try to get them to stay longer? To stay longer.
Probably give them more training and more opportunities for career growth.
Yeah, and more, and different experiences within the year, right? and make sure that they understand as soon as you bring them in that there might be a career, if there is a career path here. So it's going to require our organizations, though, to really look at career pathing then, right? And to say, and career pathing, it doesn't always necessarily have to mean vertical, right? It can be horizontal as right. So what experiences that could we provide to give that person that you think you might only have for a year multiple opportunities, because the chances they might stay with you longer then, right? And also within that year, show progression, because that person will leave you. If you have that person for 2 years, you're lucky, because typically our millennials will stay with us for 2 years, right? So demonstrate what can you provide to that employee in a 2-year period, right? And what opportunities can you get them? In that way, you'll keep them longer, and you'll also have a better chance of attracting them in when you're recruiting, right? Because they'll see that. So again, it's that how can we position this job, this position, whether it's through the title, whether it's through, what's the value proposition you're bringing to these candidates when you are recruiting them, right? And that's that client mindset, right? These applicants are your clients. You want to attract the unicorn, right? So how are you positioning that position, right? Back in the day, we used to say when we posted a job, well, we need to be careful of the title that we're posting there because our own employees read it, and, that's messaging to them too, right? Get over it. Get over it, right? You need to communicate to your people what you're doing to attract and retain the best people. And the title that they may see in a job post may be different from what they're seeing in the past, right? So you need to educate even your people on your team to help them understand throughout the recruitment process, and also as you bring them in. It's going to look different, and different is good. Different is okay, but you need to explain it to them, right? So communicate. And that's what's happening because of the number of millennials in our workforce. That's what they expect, right? Based on, compared to the baby boomers who are like me going, I just saw a posting on the site. What the heck is that job? I don't see that job in the organizational chart. Help me understand, right? And that's some of the things we have to do as we attract a new generation diversity into our workforce. It's going to look different. But it's important to people of my generation to understand. So, and in order to have a successful recruit into your organization, you got to be communicating to your applicants, but you also got to be communicating to the rest of your people within your organization as to what's happening, because it's a changing paradigm. It's looking different. It's looking fresh.
Compared to baby boomers and Gen Xers, millennials are far more entrepreneurial. They have higher risk tolerances. So 70% of millennials envision working for themselves at some point in their careers. They're embracing consulting. They're less attracted to full-time permanent roles. Traditional employment structures aren't as attractive. They value remote work opportunities and flexible hours and schedules. They look for companies that value work-life balance, and as well a commitment to learning and training. Okay, so we really something I'm so passionate about, something that if you take away anything from today, take away the impact that social media is having on today's workforce, on today's organizations. Unlike no other time in history, millennials, applicants, doesn't have to be only millennials, have the capacity to research not only the positions, the companies, the interviewer, by utilizing sites like LinkedIn and Glassdoor. Right, but before they step foot into that interview room, they know so much about the company. They know about you as an interviewer. We've never seen things like that before. And companies are under increasing pressure to ensure this is so important, that their reputation is positive, because unlike never before, candidates, employees have the ability to post reviews on your company. So I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with Glassdoor, and companies are using it and employees are using it. And yes. Right. So you're right. Reference USA. So if you're not a member of the Calgary Public Library, I encourage you to become one. It's free to and they have an incredible online different resources that are available to you. Reference USA it gives you the ability to do database searches in specific sectors or areas. And you can find out an incredible amount of information, all of the employees' names and how much the company's making, and, yes.
It's the SWOT analysis.
So how does that help me with recruiting?
Well, I would say what it does is it gives a leg up to candidates, because now a candidate can go and they can do a search and they can discover all of the different companies out there, and they have the ability to go and research them. And if giving back and being socially responsible is important, they are able to go out and look up those. Like, they are taking control of their career search now. They are looking at reputations. They're looking at companies and what they're doing, and that's becoming important.
So as an employer, can I impact that listing? Because as a recruiter, I want to make sure I've got a good profile on there, right?
Yeah. Well, you don't really have a profile. So Glassdoor is more the subjective reviews and that kind of thing. The Reference USA is more the facts. So what's your size? Who are your employees? Because it lists all the top executives, and it lists their address and their websites and
So as a recruiter,
data.
I'd want to know what's out there on me. So that would be a good resource for me to look up and know as I prepare for an interview, because I know for sure my applicants are probably looking there. Because we've often had a recruiter has come to me, we've got a new job in, right? And they'll say, Janet, this is going to be a challenge. And I'm going, why? They said they've got a terrible reputation on Glassdoor.
Yeah.
So that matters, yes. We have a huge role to play within our organization to make sure our brand is solid.
Yes.
Because if our brand isn't solid, we're not going to get the unicorn. So it's the conversation we need to be having with our leaders to talk to them about the importance of brand, the importance of value proposition in order for us to be effective as recruiters. So it's that strategic conversation we need to be having in order for us as recruiters to be doing the job we need to do. So just if you take away anything from that, maybe think about that and what impact that can have with respect to your organization and the conversation you need to be having. We're going to just very quickly just meet at your tables and talk a little bit about your experience when you're hiring millennials, and then we'll share very quickly. We are on a tight timeline, but I think it is important for us to share at our tables, so we are going to take time for this exercise. We'll give you a couple of minutes and then we'll ask for feedback. Okay, let's share our stories. If I could have everybody, I know we could probably talk forever, but we just want to sort of capture some of the key points of your discussion. And why don't we start with this table over here? How do you attract and retain this generation? Share your stories.
Okay, so we have a millennial at the table, and
a proud millennial.
And you should be proud.
Yeah, right. So our approach, we're currently working on a recruitment page that basically is like a blog style. So whenever I'm posting a job, I ask different individuals that have similar roles to do a blog post on like a day in a life.
Oh, wow.
And we're trying to portray the culture. So we have more of our like value proposition on that web page. And it's very informal. It flows like a blog. It shows photos so they can see like who's actually in our organization, and it seems to be really effective. We also we're accepting video applications now. So we were just saying it's not necessarily always a millennial thing. It really depends on the values and the cultural fit, but we'll have folks that will now really see the interest in wanting to kind of share a video application, which it's really neat to to change that kind of approach when we're recruiting.
So can I ask on that recruitment, I love that idea. So that's a good practical tip, right? On your recruitment page, change it up, like make it interactive, make it speak to your culture and your values. I love it. How rigorous is your organization in before videos are uploaded or anything is put on there? Is there a vetting that goes through that or not?
It does go through, so any of our staff that have been asked to write the blog or like do any sort of video content,
Right.
it comes back through us.
Okay.
And then we would post it.
Right.
Only like a few people have access to actually like editing the page.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
Because you want to make sure that everything is consistent. However, I mean, back in the day, we wouldn't even think about doing something like that because we'd want to tightly control the messaging, right? To the extent that you can loosen that, right? So that your employees can speak, but you still have to be aware of, you know, there's certain things I'm sure you'd want to still vet. But to the extent that you can is loosen those controls
For sure.
and allow your employees to speak on your behalf. That's the best way to share and get your value proposition out. I love it. That recruitment page is
Yeah,
awesome.
and they're proud of
Thank
it
you.
too.
Oh,
That's
I'm
the best
sure they're
part.
proud of it. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. That's what our millennials are bringing to our organization. How great is that? How great is that? So thank you for sharing.
My 21-year-old son got hired to work with locks and safes, and he was sending a play-by-play texting to his employer, taking pictures showing why the hardware that was purchased, and he said he didn't put this in the text, but he came home and told my 19-year-old daughter they're upselling, and that piece doesn't fit on this Calgary housing door at all. The job took him 2 extra days because it's a mismatch, but he couldn't reject it. Anyways, he got accolades in front of the whole company because he texted so accurately. They've never had communication like that before.
Wow, that's awesome.
And
Yeah.
so in that meeting, they said, follow Steve.
So again, thank you for sharing that story. That's that whole bit of empowering our people. Like, let go a bit, right? Like, texting is good. Like, texting is the way we will communicate. Yeah. Yeah, wow, yeah. And make sure when you're recruiting that sentiment, that's what's going to attract people to your organization. How many of our millennials, that's where they want to work, where they can. Texting is good, texting is acceptable, because that speaks their language, right? So again, when you're doing your value proposition, are you capturing that? So that your unicorn hears that and go, whoa, I want to go to work for them, even though they may not pay top dollar.
And it's really thinking about your own beliefs and your own biases around different workplace practices, like the importance or the perceived importance of having bums in seats and texting, and it's changing. So I think you need to adopt some flexibility and acceptance of changes that are fast coming.
Okay, let's just do the last 2 and then we'll move on, or the last 3.
So I think one of the things for millennials and kind of attracting and retaining millennials is really understanding kind of where they came from just before coming into the workforce. And a lot of them coming from a university background. And I hear some of you guys talking about bringing people in from business schools and things like that. That landscape nowadays, at least from what I understand, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a lot more competitive now coming out of university than maybe perhaps decades ago and things like that. So they're coming out of an environment where they are constantly competing with their peers and things like that. And they also, and you have to pair that with an understanding that millennials have a very clear knowledge of the window of their the best opportunity for them to grow their careers, which is after graduation for maybe the next 10, 15 years, and also when it's going to plateau. So within that time frame, they are going to do everything they can to maximize their earning potential. Besides the earning and things like that, I know we talk about it's not just about the earnings, but it's also their contributions, their experiences that they gain in the workforce within those first 10, 15 years. And honestly, coming out of that competitive kind of landscape of university, and with social media and all those things like that, and their connections with their peers that they use to compete with, it's constantly, whether they tell you or not, it's I'm working for a bigger company than you. I'm working for a better company than you. I make more than you. I do this better than you. I do that better than you. It's a competition all the time. And you might not say it, outright, right? But posting things on social media, and whether this person is successful, now they get to go to exotic destinations on travel like a couple times a year when their friend just sits at home and things like that. Those, yeah.
My fellow my fellow classmate was downtown at an oil and gas company, and I'll tell you, it was very structured, and they didn't get, so they talk about that. Not only is it competitive out there, it's very global now. I mean, I'm recruiting in mainland China and in Europe and in the United States and in Montreal, all over the place, and I can do that. I can recruit as effectively for a Calgary candidate as I can a mainland China candidate, honestly. So it's a competitive landscape out there.
So I'm a millennial as well, and some of the things that I was sharing with them was if someone had to try to retain me, or I would just imagine my group of friends, some of the things that we really look forward to is vacation, more vacation days, and it's the point of comparison, like he mentioned, is always like, oh, where are you traveling, or how many vacation days are you getting, or if you are getting professional development opportunities from your company, then are they sending you off outside the city for them? So professional development is important, but also we really like when we're sent out of the city and we get to travel while we're doing that. So vacation, flexibility, hours, professional development, and one of the other things was the title. Mm-hmm. So because we're very social media friendly, and I'm really big on LinkedIn and brand images on LinkedIn and things like that. So if I was an admin assistant who was earning way more than my friend who was a counselor or a assistant manager, I wouldn't be so happy, even though I was making more money, because the title doesn't give me that kind of satisfaction. But if I had a higher title, a better title, and I was being paid less, I would feel happier.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and that addresses one of the challenges you're having, right? Positioning your job, right? Hear it from the millennial. That is important to them, right? Position it, whatever it takes. Make sure you've clearly defined what you're looking at for skill set, but don't get hung up on that title, right? What's going to appeal to the person, the applicant that you are looking for, so you can attract that unicorn, because we want you, right? Okay, thank you for that. Very good. But we do want to talk about the baby boomers in the workforce. So this is people, my generation, and so individuals that, maybe over the age of 60, maybe even older than 60, and maybe even 70, right? That are available to our applicant pool, who will be looking at our job postings, and who basically are a huge resource for us, right? And they're a huge resource. Why? Because they've got lots of experience. They usually have lots of experience in different sectors. They have life experiences, right? And another thing is they are hard workers. This group know how to work, right? And so they're also lovely mentors for your millennials, right? So it's a huge, lovely marriage if you find the right boomer. Also, boomers like flexibility. Millennials like flexibility. Boomers like flexibility, because they're kind of moving into retirement, right? So they also like the gig economy. They like the gig rather than full-time employment. It allows them to work for a while and then maybe go down south for a while. So you think in terms of your value proposition, and your value proposition will also, if it's about flexibility, where we work, how long we work, is also going to appeal to your boomers, right? So keeping that in mind as you plan out your recruitment and think about that value proposition. Your boomers are healthier. You know, the old saying, the new 60 is the new, no, what is it? The new 60 is the old 40? Is that what it is? Yeah. Thank goodness. So, you know, they are looking younger, they're coming, you know, they're full of vitality. They are, you know, they are keepers for another, you know, 10, 20 years. It's different, right? Just because they're a healthy applicant. So, you know, back in the day, we'd wonder, do we really want to bring somebody on that's 60? Oh, yeah. Because they will be good for a short period of time. They will be wonderful as that mixed diversity in your workforce. And they might be your unicorn. So it won't be without its challenges, though, because the skill sets that your boomers are bringing compared to your millennials are a different skill set. We're not as tech savvy. Sometimes we wonder about our patience level as we deal with millennials who expect everything now, and that they can walk into the CEO's office without going through the proper channels because they want information and they want it now. So, you know, you may have, as you bring boomers and millennials together, some conflict, which is going to have to be managed. And that's why I'm saying a diverse workforce is not always the easiest workforce. It's the best, in my opinion, but it does take some managing. So, you know, you'll want to have to work on conflict resolution, conflict management. I mean, I'm going off to a client this afternoon, and guess what they're bringing me in to do? Conflict resolution. And guess who it's between? A millennial and a boomer. But they're invested, right? They want it to work. And so they're investing in giving their people the tools. So, so as you bring people in, mix it up a bit, create that diversity, but also put processes in place to manage what is definitely going to be conflict at times. And be prepared for that, right? And that's a good thing, not a bad thing. So a question, we're going to take in 5 minutes, we're going to take our break. Just a quick conversation at your tables. What are you doing to accommodate the trends? And what planning should you be doing? And how will this impact your recruitment strategy? So have a quick conversation at your table. What planning are you doing today before you go into recruitment? And what planning do you need to be doing in the future based on some of the conversation that we've had today? Because this is going to set it up nicely because we're going to go into recruitment planning after the break. So I just want Jill, before we go on break though, to very quickly talk about a few trends in recruitment. We've covered off some of this already, so we're going to go fast.
Okay, so just as boomers need to make changes in order to fit into organizations that they very well may be led by and staffed with younger workers than themselves, company leaders need to set a tone that's welcoming to an aging workforce. Workers, regardless of their age, must be offered opportunities to advance, to access training, transfer to desired positions, be rewarded for their performance, and receive feedback and coaching.
So just before we go on that, I know we're going to go fast, but I just want to pick up on a few things on that. One of the things that I heard Jill say there that we haven't talked about is you are going to have one generation managing a different generation, right? So that's important to think about in terms of recruiting. Who is the manager? What age group are they? And if there's a difference there, pay attention to that, right? As you're recruiting, as you're managing the expectations of that manager and the preparation you're needing to do in order to make sure that's welcoming, right? So pay attention to that in the recruitment because that's going to be the starting point, right? But you need to back it up and think about that as part of your recruitment plan as well. What's that going to look like and what preparation do you need to make sure that that's a success? Sorry, Jill.
Having conversations with your management team on what those different generations in the workforce look like. Organizations need to be far more proactive rather than reactive than they have been in the past. So managing their brand is going to be really important. Organizations need to improve the candidate experience.
I think you need to talk about this one, yeah.
Okay, so I think of it as we need to we need to think of our candidates like we would an account manager. They're the client, and they're the ones who, after one bad experience, could potentially go out and post that experience on social media. So we have to think about how we're treating the candidates and the process that they're going to go through the recruitment process, how we're treating them, how we're talking to them. All of that is going to become really important. Michael, like Michael said, it's competitive out there, and candidates are more aggressive than we've seen in the past. So they are doing things like wanting to connect on LinkedIn with you and wanting to call and even go into the companies and talk to people. So it's just important you think about that and you have an understanding and awareness around it, and have discussions within your organization about this and the importance of it. And maybe that will trigger somebody, at the front desk or whatever, to have a different approach when a candidate comes in.
Because your unicorn may just drop by.
They might.
They might, because that's the way they do it in our millennial group. They'll just drop by. But that might be your unicorn. Sorry, there was a question here. That's excellent feedback. Back in the day, you wouldn't have called them maybe, and you would not have given them feedback because you were just, the thing is control messaging, right? But that's changing now, right? You still have to be careful what you're saying, right? But if you've got a good recruitment process, you can honestly give them feedback. That's valuable feedback. So that's been a change in the last, I would say, 5 years as well. So thank you for that. Okay, we're gonna go.
There's just one more.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, and really, the importance of networking is key, critical, more important than ever. Utilizing tools like LinkedIn. If you're not aware of LinkedIn and its capabilities, invest some time learning about it, because that's the tool that most organizations and candidates are using to network. Sales organizations are using it, and it's a connected world, right? So you may connect to somebody, but they're connected to 10 other people that are similar candidates to what the role that you're looking to fill. So utilizing, understanding the capabilities of social media, I think is becoming very important.
Jill, you're not even posting for some of your positions, right? Jill does completely for some positions. You're doing all targeted recruiting, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And it's very effective. And it's just through the networks that she's built.
Candidates are investing a lot of time in their online profiles. And it's almost a more effective route, I feel, than posting jobs.
But you have to invest in a lot, though, right? Because it's building relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And honestly, a lot of people will just tell another, you need to go talk to Jill, because she's a wealth of information about what's out there, what's available. So then just through word of mouth, but also because Jill treats her applicant as a client, she has a huge network. And it works to her benefit because she finds unicorns all the time. So we're just going to power through a few slides more on the to give you some, again, some practical but also some strategic thoughts and thinking prior to going into the recruitment planning exercise. Just a conversation I had with Jolie just during break actually speaks to this slide. And if you're experiencing lots of churn, lots of turnover in your organization, really back that up and think in terms of strategically what do we need to be doing differently. And I really encourage you, it starts with the recruitment process, really, making sure that you're bringing the right people in to fit the profile for your organization, right? So I can't emphasize enough, if you're having a lot of turnover, think about, have we defined well enough what we're offering candidates? What's our value proposition? What's the profile of the perfect person to work for us? And then go after and recruit that person and see what happens to your turnover. Hopefully you'll find it decreases because you're hiring for fit. and hiring for fit is critical. We have some clients that we are constantly looking for them, because we know their culture, we know what works for them, and even though they may not have a live posting, guess what? We're still sending them over to say, you need to look at this person because this person is a good fit for you. Would you agree, Jill?
Everything I do, any success that I have as far as recruitment goes stems from how well the company understands what their values are, because every program in the organization gets tied back to what the company's values are and what they stand for. If I don't understand what the values are of a company, I'm not going to be able to find the best fit for them.
In our own organization, I'm constantly recruiting really top-notch consultants. In that, I'm always networking, and once I've met somebody that I think is a good match, even though I might not be able to bring them in at that particular time, I'm staying connected with them because eventually there's going to be a good fit for them in our organization. So I'm constantly looking and recruiting for a good fit. It's critical. We've talked about networking already and the importance of networking today in your recruitment. It's network, and it's use your social media, and it's every touch point, every connection with an applicant, with a candidate, because if they don't come work for you, they may talk to somebody that is out in the community that is your unicorn. So that touch point is always critical and key. Keep it top of mind. Again, we've talked about what's important in your retention strategies, particularly with the millennials. It's not a linear path in their careers, right? It's about what's happening today, how can I continue advancement? It might be horizontal, it might be vertical, but it's about the experience. Yes. Not as far, my answer to that is not with, in 10 years, 75% of our workforce will be millennials. That tells me no, because they value different things. And long-term careers is not what they value. Again, we need to be proactive and not reactive, and that's why we're going to start talking about recruitment plans in a couple of minutes. And again, that candidate experience is critical and key, and Jill's talked to that already. Okay, here's important, I'd like to suggest a practical tip. Some sites for posting positions. Do you want to talk to this briefly, Jill?
Right. So, as I said, I don't post, but if I do, Indeed for sure is number one on my list. LinkedIn would be second. Monster, Workopolis, I don't use anymore. Glassdoor is becoming a more popular recruiting site. And they have a free offering, although I find when you post something on Glassdoor using their free services, you get candidates from all over the world. The Calgary Job Board is good. The Calgary Job Bank, eluda.ca, work, and then there's some nonprofit specific sites that are very good that I use. So workinnonprofits.ca I use, and I've just learned about reachhire.ca, Charity Village, the talent pool. Yeah, so that's a little bit about job posting sites.
Okay, we're going to now shortly go into recruitment planning, and we've talked about recruitment plan. You've heard me talk about recruitment planning. I'm a strategist. Without a plan, I'm useless. So that's my work life, that's my family life. Everybody knows that about me, right? So I just felt that it was important for us to talk today about recruitment planning and leave here with some thoughts around a plan. So if you don't do recruiting right, it's costly. Your managers need to understand that, your clients need to understand that. It costs us approximately 1.5 times a person's annual salary to recruit and bring them in. That's expensive. So we need to do it right. So if you're trying to get the intention of your client or your managers or your leaders as to why it's important to do a recruitment plan, show them the numbers, right? It's costly. And again, we've talked about the importance of the planning, making sure you've got that well-defined job description, but go beyond that. It's about the value proposition, it's about the profiling, right? Think about your strong person. Who was the ideal candidate? Start defining it, start categorizing it, start picturing it, and develop that profile. And then use that profile to say, okay, where do I need to go and find that candidate, right? Where do I need to go and find that match? Again, we've talked about the importance of the value proposition, and also think about in your recruitment plan, who are you going to bring in the interview process, right? And think in terms of you're involving different people maybe in your process who can talk about the value proposition, who can talk about what it's like to live and work and be part of your organization, to experience the culture. So who might you involve in the recruitment process to make sure when that unicorn walks through the door, they go, whoa, this is where I want to work. So who are you involving in that process, in that interview, and bring the best to the table? Because when the unicorn walks through the door, you don't want to lose them. Think in terms of who's going to check the references, what that's going to look like. Often I have clients saying, Janet, a reference isn't worth the paper it's written on. Wrong. Wrong. Today we can establish relationships and we can get good references. It's going back and establishing relationships and making sure you have the right people who can build a relationship as they check a reference, right? So think about who's the best person to check those references, and they are important. Yeah. Once I heard somebody say, I don't really check people's Facebook page because I really don't think that's appropriate. Wrong. You should be checking their Facebook page, because you're going to see their value system. You're going to see what they're all about. You're going to see what they do at work and also outside of work. Check their Facebook page, yes. And again, who and how will you orientate the new hire is going to be critical and should be part of your recruitment plan, because it's not just about finding the right candidate, it's about how you're onboarding and how you're bringing them in, because you will lose that applicant, you will lose that candidate if you don't do that properly. So your recruitment plan has to be also about how you're onboarding. So we're going to get practical at your tables, and we're going to do this for about half an hour. We're going to talk, so you can have those now. Give yourself freedom to have those in-depth discussions about recruitment, about what we've talked about this morning, about what your recruitment plan might look like. I want you to agree at your tables about a position that maybe has been challenging to recruit for. So agree at your table what that position might be, and then develop a recruitment plan. So give yourselves a little bit of make it edgy. Don't do an easy recruit, do a more challenging recruit. It'll require us to think outside the box then. So pick what's been a challenging recruit and work together on developing the recruitment plan. And to the extent that we can at the end, we're going to give you, we'll check in with you in 15, 20 minutes. We'll also walk around, give you some suggestions. And then to the extent we have time, we're going to check back in and hear some unique things about your recruitment plan. So keep running, when you hear something at your table as you're working on the recruitment plan, go, wow, that might be an interesting point to share with the rest of the group. And we'll grab some nuggets before we leave then. So we'll go into groups, but you know what would be really nice if we could mix up the groups a bit and allow ourselves to meet and talk to other people that we may not have had a chance to talk to. So even if a couple of you at your table could get up and move to a different table, that will mix up the discussion a little bit. And for the smaller groups, if you want to join a bigger group, I'm wondering if this table here wants to join, and you will definitely want to join. So maybe we would have 3 groups then, rather than 5. So let's juggle it up a bit, mix it up a bit, and I'm going to check in with you in 15 minutes. Identify a position that's been hard to recruit, agree on it, and develop your recruitment plan. Think outside the box. So one of the things that we picked up on as we walked around was we heard, you know, what does the impact of testing have on our recruitment processes, and what does that look like? Also, how does transparency affect our recruitment processes, and what do we need to be thinking about in terms of transparency? And also a conversation around one size doesn't fit all. So can we just come together as a full group so that's only one voice? So let's go through now and say, is there anything else that we should maybe add to this list with respect to nuggets that we might want to talk about and further explore in the last 20 minutes of our workshop? Let's start with this table here. Was there anything else that we should maybe explore that you heard about in a little bit more detail, and then we'll do a deeper dive?
And perks of the job directly to the job description. One comment that was made, if you talk about that in the interview, you might be missing candidates that are overlooking the job description if that information is not there.
Okay, so advertising, and then is it about the value proposition then? Yeah, definitely. Capturing it? Yeah. Okay.
So like at Woods Home, is that how I say it? Okay. Just like showcasing some of their awards. So they were named like top female employer.
Wow.
So I loved something like that I think could be really helpful when you're trying to fit with the right culture of that person and their values.
So we just went through a process where we hired a communications coordinator, and a part of our recruitment plan was those who were contacted to come in and do an interview for us were asked to actually bring in a fresh ad that they had created off of one of our exhibitions on our website. And then they were told that that ad piece that you create will be shared with the rest of the team, and that will be a part of your interview process. And the reason I think it was so successful is that's how we work in our shop. Like, our communications coordinator will create an ad, and then it goes out to everybody or a few people for feedback. So it was kind of a preview as to what's going to come if you get the job, and yet it also engaged some people, and a few people said, "Oh no, I'm good, thank you." But it wasn't then just about their personality, it was also about their design skills. So it was a way to look at both sides of it, and it seemed to work really, really well.
Wow, that's great. And what position was that for? That was
communications coordinator,
awesome.
but it's a design as well, like advertising, marketing.
Right.
It's one of those big hat
I
ones.
love it. And there's direct alignment there of what you're asking them to do based on what the job requires, which I think is really important. So that's lovely.
Yeah.
And how nice is it that you engage people in that process, right? It's fun, it's interactive, it's everything that our millennials will just be all over. Really, really, they'd love it. And actually, I think there'd probably be some boomers that would really like that too. Yeah, there was. Great. Okay, thank you. What about this table here? Some thoughts?
So I've had some success and some challenges. I've hired some senior level positions in the past, and one of the strategy that I used was once, as you said, understanding the needs of the organization, and really, not just the current need, but also what's the future need, and keeping that in mind when you're screening candidates. So I have used panel interviews extensively, but also one of the selection criteria was asking the candidate to prepare a presentation if it's a senior level position, essentially to assess their public speaking skills, the ability to influence, and also presentation skills, and can they articulate their thoughts and really engage the audience. So that has worked very effectively in positions, but recently the same strategy is not working for another senior level position, where it's there's a combination of technical skills, understanding of systems, and really has to have the ability to work with senior level, the owners or the president of the organization. So that's where I'm trying to work and see if I can just alter the method and find the right candidate. With the way roles are changing, and I don't work in recruitment, but just a thought about that. If recruiters are needing to take pieces out of 3 or 4 different job descriptions because titles are changing, things like that, you can go on the Alberta Learning Information Service website, ALIS, and look at occupational profiles and pull pieces from various roles if you're trying to create something new
Great.
to attract. So it's ALIS, it's a Government of Alberta website.
I like what I heard there too about behavioral anchors to support your core competencies. That will help you with your recruiting as well, because it's the behaviors that will help you with your profiling. Yeah, great. And again, the matching the client expectations, we feel as though that initial plan, that's where you sit down with that hiring manager, that client, and talk to them about their expectations. That's that educational piece, right? Share with them some of the things you've heard today, right? So you can ideally manage the expectations. And if they're expecting that you are going to find a unicorn in like 3 weeks, like, you need to get that one nipped in the bud right away, right? it may take longer to find your unicorn, right? And helping them understand why that is, and not just telling them, but engaging them in a dialogue, using some of the information you've heard today to help manage that. And then around that compensation and that expectation, if they are saying, you know what, we can only afford to pay, you know, 35,000, and you know, some of the expectations are coming in at 45. Talk to them up front about salary ranges. Go and equip to talk to that manager about what's out there. The world is your oyster. You have so much information out there. Bring that to your hiring manager. Would you agree, Jill?
I think really important, and this often happens. A role will come up, and I'll talk to the manager and say, you've got 1 week to fill this role. It needs to be filled. You have to fill it. You've got 1 week. And I've got other managers the majority of the time. So it's an education piece where a candidate will say, well, when do you need to have this role filled? And the best answer is we will fill the role when we find the best fit for the role. So key, critical, don't rush your hiring. It's the most important thing that you can do. And if it's a more challenging role to fill, invest the time in, and it's going to take longer. It might take a month instead of 2 weeks or even longer, but don't fill the role until you are confident you have a good fit.
And on that point, and I think this hasn't changed. Like, as I said, it's been a long time since I've been actively recruiting. I work in different areas now, but back in the day when I was recruiting, one of the golden rules I always had was listen to my gut. And guess what? That has not changed. Would you agree?
Yes.
That has not changed. If there's something that's speaking to me, or there's something that's speaking to your manager and the manager's saying there's something just not right, pause. More dialogue, more discussion. What is it? Define it. What's causing that? I'm just not sure, right? Take the references to check that out. Use every tool in your toolbox to help figure out what's speaking to either my gut as the recruiter or my manager's gut, who will actually work with this important. Gut is important. You want to add?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I think we've got just a wrap-up slide, and then we're good. The wrap-up slide basically speaks to a few tools in your toolkit. We just basically, when we recruit, we have a number of tools that we pass on to our clients, so I thought we're definitely going to pass them on to you. Jill's got her reference check form in there that she uses. And I'll have to tell you, when I do a reference check, I actually do refer to the guide, but for me, it's always about trying to establish a relationship. I Google them, I look them up in LinkedIn, I try to find if there's something in common. Sometimes they went to the same school as I did, whatever, right? Like, I really try hard to find a link to the person I'm going to be calling for a reference check, because I know that's important, that relationship piece. If I can establish a relationship, I'll have a better chance of getting the information I need when I check that reference. We've got a telephone screening in there. That's part of our process. We do telephone screens all the time, so we shared with you one of the tools that our recruiters, Joe, you're using it quite a bit as well.
Yep.
And so that might be helpful for you, and some sample interview questions in your toolkit as well. So that's it. We've had lots of questions and answers. Unless there's a burning question, we'll need to call it a wrap. Is that correct, Jackie? Is there any burning question? Okay. If you do, and you'd like to connect, Jill and I'd love to chat with you. So feel free to email us, reach out to us, and give us a call, and or connect with us after the session. But thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity for coming.